It seems that everywhere I go, they build entirely new towns or cities, kind of starting out initially kind of like replicas. I'm supposed to be in Maple Grove, for example, right now. This is nowhere near Maple Grove. It's far out. It's about 30 miles west northwest of Minneapolis. It comes up as Osseo sometimes. I don't know if that's right, but it's not Maple Grove. It's I guess getting significantly down 94 West area. Heading towards where it curves to begin to go north normally into I guess St. Cloud and whatever. But that's also probably not entirely accurate. Anyway, over and over again, I've seen this repeated many times. Wherever I'm trying to go, typically it ends up a copy, if not multiple copies, being built over and over again as I move of the destination that I had. It started in Washington when I went into Seattle. I noticed right away it wasn't the real one. It ended up being like a second Seattle, kind of a clone of the original Seattle. Well, anyway, when I made my way out of there by taking a bus to some suburbs I had passed through when I initially got there, um, I took a bus only just to the outskirts of this Seattle, and as I continued to walk west because I wanted to get to the coast. I was trying to get towards the coastline so I could find the right, like Tacoma, Seattle. I was looking for Tacoma. Well, anyway, I kept going. I was going south, but I was looking for the coastline, so I was trying to go west and south. Anyway, they just kept building. And I could see the construction crews like in front of me, copies of the towns that I just passed through, the suburbs. It was like Federal Way, a place called Des Moines, and one other place south of Seattle. So I passed through this Federal Way and this Des Moines, Washington, right? And then they would build another Federal Way and another Des Moines, another Federal Way and another Des Moines. As I'm walking through them, the point that I got to this Federal Way and I could see them like building it. They're building the overpass. They got construction crews out there. They're rapidly building this mall. I could see the whole thing being constructed. The entire highway that kind of goes over it and on the well, kind of turns off and goes over it and wraps around as residential. That stuff hadn't been built yet, so the old overpass and everything wasn't even all the way built. But they tried to bring traffic in on the to follow me, so I'm going along, but the whole thing is only like halfway constructed, right? Right when I got in there, a cop came and picked me up. Said that because I was walking like on the highway, I was walking to go into the center area there. He picked up and said, you can't be walking on the highway. Where'd you want to go? I said, oh, I was trying to go to this place in Federal Way. He goes, oh, that's not Federal Way. That's, Des Moines or whatever. Federal Ways over here. And I said, well, it looks a lot like it. He goes, yeah, it does. And he goes, hmm. Well, okay. He goes, okay, I'll take you back. I'll take you over the Federal Way. It's just up a bit, right? And so he goes and takes me all the way back. He takes me to the second one, I think. Yeah, he took me to the second one. So I'm there and I'm at that Federal Way. So I go shopping for a moment. I buy something like Best Buy or something, some cheap. And you start heading that way again. And sure enough, it was partially completed by the time I got there to the point it was the exact replica. It's almost indecipherable from the other ones, but that it was going inland more. It was going east so that I wasn't going towards the coast. I was going the opposite direction I was trying to go, but it was almost pretty much entirely constructed, and they just started having traffic going through it like it was normal. And it was just a mirror of the Best Buy and everything I had just gone through. There's a Joanne Fabrics, so there's tons of stores. It's really large. Well, anyway, I go through there and I get to this one, like this Des Moines or whatever. I think that was the next one. And then as I made through that way, I got on this tram because I'm like, well, I know that it's like this train that's on this overpass, this really high up. Well, anyway, I get on this train because it's going to the Seattle Tacoma International Airport, right? And at this point, they I already knew there were multiple of them, but I didn't know they had built like five of them. Okay. So anyway, I took this straight south because that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to go south. I didn't care where it went. I wanted to go south. But meanwhile, when I looked around, I could see that a lot of it wasn't built. A lot of this tram, it's like this, um, I guess, road on pillars or whatever up in the air. There was this train. Most of it had not been built, like going southeast and so on. It was just partially built, but it was built going south. So I go there, right, and I had no idea if this was the right airport. I go there, I get out of the airport, I get up, and I just start walking south. Sure enough, I started walking south. I didn't find. I remember. I found myself going passing the Federal Way again. I just walked on by. Saw the Des Moines again. I walked on by, but this time, it was something like this when I started. When I got to between Federal Way and Des Moines, I could see seagulls in the sky flying around. Seagulls, like I was, because remember I was trying to go south and west, and I just kept doing it over and over. And right as I began to see this, it was like 6 in the morning. I had walked that day probably about 25 miles. Um, Excuse me, I'm running out of breath. Um, at that point, it started to downpour really bad radioactive waste, really really bad, the worst it ever had, and it was so bad that I had to put like boxes over me and stuff and go to this parking lot where there were like cardboard boxes and by this dumpster and cover myself in it, um, because they didn't want me to discover this. They wanted me to get out of the area, right? It was kind of a strange area. You could tell people live there, and it wasn't really Des Moines because I had gotten all the way to Des Moines and gone west. At that point, I started going west real fast. I'd only gotten a couple miles west when they started doing this. A few people in the area appeared that maybe they were Jewish. I'm not sure, but there were only a couple residents there. And you could tell it wasn't really that area anymore. This was a town behind it that was hidden. So anyway, a couple hours later, the next morning, I woke up probably at about noon, actually, or something. 6 hours later, I just got up and started going straight west. Right. Sure enough, that whole time I was literally like 4 blocks from the coast. Yeah, I just kept walking. I had to go through like some residential streets and stuff, just kind of hidden and make it so you can't see it. And there it was. There was a pier, and there was this bar at the end of the pier, and there was like 20, 30 people in there, and there were all these sailboats and yachts and everything, like just dozens of them just lined up. And this is on the ocean shore, right? And then there was like 100, well, let's say about 80 yards or so deep of rocks, giant boulders going like 80 yards into the ocean behind them. They were on the coast. They were all parked on the coast, but they're all closed in. Somebody had put like 80 yards, long of boulders right behind them, all along the coast, and this went all the way down the shoreline and all the way up. So all of these boats were locked in. All these people, I assume that they were residents from the area. They were all drinking at this spot. And anyway, this has continued ever since. It's in Minnesota. Everywhere I go, they'll bulldoze entire cities and towns, change all the roads as I travel. It's really hard to explain. I just want to end this video here. But I mean, it's almost impossible. It was almost impossible to stay on the coast. But all in all, just in Washington State alone, 6 Seattles and about a dozen or more of these Federal Way and Des Moines. While I was there, and they kept building them as I was moving, and like I've had a lot of crazy instances where I had hundreds of cars I had to walk towards one-way traffic, toward it. It's like no space on the side of the road, and they're just coming right at me, going like 100 miles an hour, just tons and tons of cars, waves after wave, in order to go south and go west, to get out of these places. These places are like dungeons, right? And I'm picking up things on the road, like rims of tires, and swinging them in my arm, threatening cars not to hit me. They'll hit them and it worked, right? But I mean, in order to cross the street, right, in order to get to like the other side. But this time I was going this way. I was crossing the street because I was going to go on an off ramp to a McDonald's I saw as I was walking, right? So I had to run across the street in order to do this. And when I did, none of the traffic yielded. I couldn't, I just, as I stood there to cross, they would not yield. They just packed as fast as they could. So I had to run as fast as I could across the street, and they tried to hit me. They didn't slow down; they accelerated to try to hit me, and I had to jump. And I ended up on these the divider with I guess that tin or stainless steel type of barrier that's common on roads. There's two little things, that little stainless steel divider. I ended up having one foot on, running across, jumping with one foot on top of that, leaping and grabbing onto some tree branches and just hanging from the tree. I jumped on that and I held onto the tree. Below me was like an 80-foot drop off. It kind of went like this, where I had about a 15 or so foot beneath me, but then it was like an 80-foot drop off, and that car had almost hit me, like my foot behind me, just barely. And I just hopped and I grabbed onto that and I just dropped right off and set my foot back down. It kind of like swinged off a bit. I literally just jumped onto the tree. But I mean, I would have survived, like, say, falling down slowly but I basically came down, grabbed it right, and kind of came down and put my feet on the divider. But I mean, this is something that I've expected as a regular type of affair.